in Malawi.
Wow! Chingira! Put your mobile device security first.
For more information, contact Makra via email dg@makra.mw or call 261 toll-free from any Malawian telephone network. This message is brought to you by the Malawi government via the Malawi Communications Regulatory Authority, Makra.
Introducing the Central Equipment Identity Registry, CEIR.
Yes, the CEIR will empower mobile subscribers and strengthen their security by allowing them device while buying and blacklist mobile devices involved in illicit activities across all mobile network operators in Malawi.
Wow! Chingira! Put your mobile device security first.
For more information, contact Makra via email dg@makra.mw or call 261 toll-free from any Malawian telephone network. This message is brought to you by the Malawi government via the Malawi Communications Regulatory Authority, Makra.
Introducing the Central Equipment Identity Registry, CEIR.
Yes, the CEIR will empower mobile subscribers and strengthen their security by allowing them to block or trace stolen mobile phones, check the genuineness of a mobile device while buying, and blacklist mobile devices involved in illicit activities.
Good morning and welcome to the final day of our conference. We'll start this morning with just a recap and some highlights and some key takeaways of our meeting yesterday. My key takeaway was when Madam Chair said that it is not what the technology can do, but it is what the technology can do for you. And we also had Jessie. She had pointed out that for Malawi, the practical application for space technology would be in agriculture, and this was in line with Yusuf's presentation, where he talked about smart agriculture. We also had Engineer William and Professor Chomora, who had emphasized on the Vision 2063, and we had agreed that it should not be a youth-centric vision, but we should plan for the unborn. So I had these few takeaways. I will just take two from the floor on what your key takeaways were. I'll ask our team to assist with the mics. I know we have students here because even Engineer William had pointed out the importance of capacity building. He said he prefers action-based research. I hope our students that are here, they took note of this particular aspect of action-based research and capacity building. In the same vein of capacity building, we also have various lectures. Dr. Luhanga from DMI, I believe that our students were able to talk to him, and as well as Engineer William, just to get more on the capacity building and how best they can expand their knowledge. Do we have any text from the floor on the key takeaways?
Yeah, Charles Govert from Moyo Agribusiness Foundation. I think one of the issues that we are trying to insist is access to information. We have to make sure that whatever is being done is accessible. And the consumer of this kind of output or data is within the private sector. So the engagement of private sector players in here, for example, Press Agriculture, who have got over 30,000 hectares, who can actually utilize the space technology in their management, are not here. So the selection of stakeholders in the dialogue must be inclusive. And something that I would want to make sure that it also goes on to record is that Malawi right now in the agriculture sector, we are processing the new national agriculture policy, which is in the final phase of drafting. I would want to see that the space technologies or whatever we are discussing here becomes part of it, because in it there is use of ICTs for agricultural extension. So it's something that is a low-hanging fruit. There is a policy that is a new policy that is being developed, and I think that the MACRA needs to engage on the ICTs for extension in the National Agriculture Policy. Thank you very much.
Thank you. MACRA is here. I'm sure they have taken note of your comment. Access is truly important, but Yusuf also had talked about the ability to interpret the data. That is why capacity building is also quite important. I'll take one last comment from the floor. All right. Okay.
I think the other major takeaway is that we should think not in terms of just Malawi when it comes to space technologies. We should think global in terms of what startups we're having, what companies you're starting, because even if you launch a satellite, this thing goes around the whole globe and can take photos, can take information, data about any point around the earth. And even when you're developing these technologies, it's not just for application of agriculture, defense in Malawi, but it can go global. Thank you.
Thank you. We truly are living in a global world. Just this conference is testament to that. We have presentations. People are in South Africa. They'll be able to present online. So let's think bigger than Malawi. I'll take the last one.
Thank you. My name is Victoria Kankoke. I'm a student from Zuzu University. My key takeaway from yesterday was when I asked the question to Mr. Timidayo to say what can some of the private sectors do in order to help the youth in our country. And the main thing that I really got from that was he said we should take advantage of the free resources that we have. Through this conference, I've seen that we have companies and organizations that are really in Malawi that are trying to really push forward to bring about space technology to Malawi. And these companies, if they could also work hand in hand together with our universities, work hand in hand together with our schools, we could really take time to actually teach the youth that are the future of tomorrow about this. So it also starts with us on our own to literally take the initiative. Even us, just by coming here at this conference, we're learning a lot. We're networking with so many different people. Let it just not end here. Let us also be the people that are taking a step forward to actually push on forward the passion, push on the desire to know more about space technologies and work hand in hand with the private sectors that are available. Thank you.
Thank you. We do have Mr. Chisomo and Mr. Yusuf. They do have their startups. I hope you were able to also network with them and see how best you can collaborate with them. I'll now ask our technical team, are we set? All right. I'll ask the CEO of the South African South Africa Space Agency, Mr. Humlandi Ndau, to address us.
Good morning. Good morning, Program Director. Can you hear me?
We can hear you, but I can hear you, but just hold on. I think the sound is not yet in the hall, and they are trying to put you up on the big screens, so just give us a few seconds. Apologies for that. All right. See you, and hopefully we can hear you. So the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. I just want to say once more, good morning to everybody. This is really exciting for me. I would have liked to be there. Unfortunately, we are at a planning period here at the Space Agency, and we are, of course, engaging with our key stakeholders, including the board. We are currently working on the new vision. So I think this conversation that's happening in Malawi right now, it's happening at a very good or right time. The timing is really good because I believe that there's a lot that we can do between South Africa and Malawi. So greetings to everybody, the leadership in Malawi, the youth. I'm so excited to hear that there are a number of youth that are engaging in this conference, as well as our fellow South Africans that are there in Malawi that, of course, working with you in ensuring that we do together build a viable and a sustainable space program. I just want to start by saying that we're living in a very different world today. I don't know if some of you have heard about the VUCA world, which is a VUCA world. And this is the world that is characterized by what we call uncertainty. Is the world that it's very volatile, and it's the world that is very complex as well. If you look at some of the complexity in terms of the geopolitics that are happening today. And this is the new normal that we have to live in. It's a world that is very ambiguous, and we're calling it a VUCA world because of all those elements that characterize the world that we're living in. And therefore, what does that mean for the leadership in Africa as well as the leadership in South Africa and Malawi in ensuring that we put in place programs, of course, initiatives that are informed by policies and policies that are formulated based on evidence, policies that are also informed by our social and economic conditions. And therefore, in the VUCA world, what's required really is the world in which you need leadership, very strong leadership, that will deal with the issues of volatility. And how do you deal with the issues of volatility? You have to have leadership that's visionary. You have to set a clear vision. And that vision is followed by actions. And those actions are actions that would ensure that you realize, your goals and objectives. And therefore, in the VUCA world, you're going to need some visionary leadership that will ensure that we put in place policies and strategies that are going to address some of the societal challenges that you're facing as the country of Malawi. Secondly, in terms of the leadership that you require for the uncertainty that we're seeing today, is that you would need leadership that understands. So the uncertainty needs to have leadership that understand what the challenges are, locally, nationally, as well as regionally, and what you can contribute globally as Malawi to ensure that you bring in, or you develop, or you implement initiatives that will ensure that you address some of the socio-economic challenges that we're facing in the country as well as in the region. The third one on the complexity, and I've said that in my leadership, in the executive that I work with, you know, if you find yourself always in a complex situation, you know that just, you know, bringing in very complex strategies or very sophisticated documents that you want them implemented, it brings in a lot of confusion. It brings in a lot of people not even being able. So what I'm trying to say to you all is that you need to simplify. Simplicity is the way, because complexity breeds confusion. And I tell you that confusion at the end brings in failure. And therefore, we need to have clarity in every effort that we put in. The program that you want to shape today will have to be as clear. It will have to speak to ordinary citizens of Malawi. When you talk about the space program, and I like what one youth said as a take-home message, that we're looking at a global, you know, situation here. Globalization has brought in a lot. For us as countries, particularly as developing countries. And therefore, how do we ensure that, you know, when he talks about the photos that are taken by those satellite systems, you know, it knows no boundaries. Surely there are countries that know a lot about Malawi. Without that information, which I heard from an industry stakeholder saying that access to information is critical in building this program. And therefore, I just want to say, when you're shaping up your space program, let it be as clear. Let it be in a language that, you know, from ordinary citizens to policy formulators to decision makers, that it's very clear on how you're going to contribute in the development of the country. On ambiguity, I just want to say that you need leadership, and this, I speak to this to the youth as well, to say that this whole world is full of ambiguity. And therefore, how do we ensure that as young people, as leadership, that we adapt? So you need leadership that can ensure that there's adaptability when you build this program. And if you do so, I can tell you that you're going to put in place a program that's viable, a program that is going to ensure that it's responsive to some of the societal challenges that you're facing. Now, it's important that you have that strategic context. I thought I should also share with you some of the experiences that we've had in South Africa in establishing a national space program. And we were fortunate, for those who may know, South Africa has been involved in the space program since in the 60s. Our space operations, some 80 kilometers from head office here, has been involved, even in supporting the Apollo program. And that ground segment that we have, which of course we're going to invite you to come to our facilities to see how we've set up our facilities and the infrastructure which is critical for you to be able to implement a sustainable space program, is that we've brought in some of those facilities and expertise and competences that exist together, because for you to be able to implement a sustainable space program, you're going to have a central point of coordination The point that was made by the colleagues from industry as well on agriculture, that as you finalize in your agriculture, you need to be looking at all technologies that you need that will support you in the implementation of the agricultural policy or strategy or plan that you're working on. And therefore, space plays a critical role. I heard the program director talking about smart agriculture. What does that mean? You know, space can play a huge role in the modernization of agriculture. And that also includes in the modernization of your mining sector and so on. And those are some of the applications areas that you would, of course, be looking at. But what's critical is national support. What's critical is the commitment from the politicians, from the government. And you have to be able to put in place a very clear framework prior to you starting with the policy and getting into the development of the strategy itself, which will be followed by the implementation plan. And therefore, it is very important that you build a business case prior. So the framework that we're talking about is the one that says to the government of Malawi, we are convincing you, we are saying, look at the opportunity costs. You know, what will cost the country of Malawi if they don't invest in space? And that's critical. If you don't put in a framework and a business case that's convincing to government, you would really struggle. We've seen countries putting in very good space policies, very good national space strategies, which until today are not funded or fully funded. And that also applies to us in South Africa. There's a lot of reflection that we're making and saying that, of course, our policies, our space policy and strategies align into driving and implementing, also responding to the national priorities and the challenges, as well as contributing to the national imperatives of government and the country. And therefore, how do we then bring in the treasury, the finance ministers, and those that are able to begin to invest? We've seen in the new space, and people are tending to misunderstand that what's happening in Europe, as well as what's happening in the US, that there are angel investors, there are venture capitalists, and there are a whole host of others that are implementing. But they're failing to understand that it's at the backdrop of a huge investment that was made by the government of the United States. That applies to the US, it applies to India, it applies to Japan, it applies to Europe and so on. And because government had taken that decision to invest in space program for all these years, hence you're seeing today, because there's infrastructure, there's capacity in terms of human capital, there's capacity in terms of the capabilities as well as the infrastructure that exists. And therefore, investors, when they come to invest, they want to see the return on investment. And that's what we're seeing in the rest of the world. So when people talk about the new space and that government has no role to play, you need to first ask them the question that, who are these investors in South Africa, in Malawi, who are going to invest? If you cannot prove, if you don't have space heritage, and prove that you can fund, you can implement, actually, a sustainable, a viable space program. And therefore, we need to work very hard. And the funding models that we have to put in place are very critical. Hence, from the onset, you need to bring in national treasury to strengthen and build a business case so that when your policy and strategy gets approved by cabinet or by parliament, that there's a very clear commitment by the national treasury, as well as those that may be willing, of course, from the onset to fund and invest in a space program. So national support is the first thing that you need to get right. Secondly, the enabling environment. You have to create an environment that allows you to implement your space program. I've heard from a number of speakers earlier on as you were debriefing that enabling environment is critical. So a human capital development program has to be very clear. It has to be in place. And that we're saying as South Africa, we have experience, we have academic institutions that have had successful human capital development programs, which we're willing to bring in your scientists and engineers to come and work with our engineers, to come and join our programs within our universities, be it in Cape Peninsula University of Technology, that's looking at satellite engineering program, be it in Durban University of Technology, which is looking at communications, surveillance, as well as navigation and positioning, which are very critical elements of thematic areas of the space program. And you have Stellenbosch, which is looking at satellite engineering as well. You have University of KwaZulu-Natal, that's looking at access to space in terms of rocketry science, building indigenous launch capabilities. And these are all elements that are critical in building your space programs. And of course, you don't have to do all of those. What's critical in the beginning, it's on the downstream segment. So that's on the applications. I've heard that Engineer Makwinja talked about what we call action-based research. And therefore, why is it so important that you invest in human capital? But as you do that, you're looking at applied research. Blue sky research is all good. Of course, it's good for scientists. But we need to be focusing on investing on applied research because you want graduates, you want the output in terms of applications in all areas that you've identified. Your priority area, if it's agriculture, if it's on environmental management, if it's on disaster risk reduction, given the climate change and the extreme events that we're seeing lately in South Africa and everywhere in the region in terms of flooding, and so on and so on. How do you build that capacity that will ensure that you've got the intelligence? The world has moved, so we're not just creating the maps as we used to do, the traditional maps. We're beginning to look at what we call Earth intelligence. And the Earth intelligence in this regard means that you're bringing in the integration of various technologies, be it on the 4IR, the fourth industrial revolution, meaning that you're looking at machine learning, you're looking at artificial intelligence, you're looking at all these areas in which you're beginning to look at not just creating a static map, but building operational applications, operational systems, as well as building intelligent systems that ensures that you develop decision support tools that will ensure that you are responsive to some of the social or societal challenges that we're facing. And this is very important. As you do this, you need to bring in all key stakeholders in all successful space programs. This is the beginning for you, but you have to identify all key government departments. If it's human settlements and housing, what does it mean in terms of building smart cities, in terms of looking at human settlements as a whole, and in terms of spatial planning? You need to look at bringing in your water department or ministry. You need to bring in all these key ministries together to define what we call your user requirements. Because your future missions or your future satellite missions would be informed by those user requirements and what's required by those ministries. And that brings me to the second point on enabling environment, the infrastructure that you need, the facilities, the satellite systems that you may want to build in the future based on the user requirements. And that is important in doing that. The third part of an enabling environment is the cooperation arrangements. You need to begin to look at regional and global cooperation. You need to be very smart and strategic in how you identify your partnership. It has to be strategic partnership. And I want to emphasize on this point, the regional cooperation, before you go globally, before we bring in our friends, from outside Africa, look inwards. Let's start building intra-Africa cooperations because we have the resources in terms of natural resources. We're well endowed and rich in all these resources. How does the space program assist in ensuring that we channel and we repurpose or we invest in programs and initiatives that will bring in economic development and provide opportunities for the people of Malawi, for the people of South Africa. And that is critical that we look at regional cooperation before we do, because we know that in most cases, our collaboration with our global partners is very skewed because they tend to bring in their own technologies, and therefore you run a risk of not being able to develop your own indigenous technologies and create opportunities for youth, create opportunities for women, and bring those that are the periphery or the outskirts to be part of this program and contribute in the knowledge generations. And therefore, it's very important that as you do these, your cooperation arrangements are tactical, are strategic, and you're looking at partnership that will help you in building capacity as well as space capabilities that you need for the country. The third aspect that you need to look at is the alignment with the global legislation. The space is governed by a number of legislative frameworks, from the Outer Space Treaty to a whole number of other liability conventions and a whole host of other legislative frameworks. And therefore, you would also need to pursue joining the United Nations Committee on Peaceful Use of Outer Space, which every year in Vienna we meet to discuss and engage in issues of global space governance. And this is very critical. You need to be thinking about, as the second point, of course, begin to look at building capacity in terms of telecommunications requirement, in terms of space frequency coordination, where you have to have that group within Malawi that begin to look at that, because you will have to bring in your Civil Aviation Authority, you will have to bring in what we call here ATNS. This is a company that looks at providing services in terms of our legislative mandate when it comes to the aviation industry. You will have to bring in what we call the Centec in South Africa. I don't know what it is in Malawi, which they look at issues of frequency allocation. They look at issues of broadband, and you bring in the security cluster as well from the defense side, because all of these are critical as you put in place your policy and strategy. On the space front, you would have to have, of course, the implementing side, which means that once you've put in place your policy and strategy, you would then, of course, through the Act, create a space agency or a space institution that's going to look at the implementation aspects. On the other side, you will have to look at the regulatory framework. And on the regulatory side, you will have to have a regulatory function in terms of what we call in South Africa is the Space Affairs Council. And the Space Affairs Council then looks at all the regulation and the regulatory function of your space program. The fourth element that we need to look at it's on the alignment with current space conversation and progress. There's a bit of a background. Program director, if someone can mute, thank you. So the fourth element is on the alignment with current space conversation globally. It's important that as Malawi, we need to start engaging regularly with spacefaring nations in the African continent and those that you have at international, the strategic partners. But what's critical is also looking at, building capacity, particularly with the youth, looking at how you bring them to become part of the global programs and initiatives that exist. For example, I heard that our colleagues from South Africa talked about AfriGeo, which is an African initiative that's looking at coordinating all Earth observation activities in Africa to ensure that one, of course, we work together as Africans in building remote sensing as well as geographic information systems to develop these applications, products and services, decision support tools, early warning systems that we talked about earlier to circumvent all the challenges that we're seeing with extreme weather and climate change. You need to be a member of GEO so that you can then fast track the building of capacity. What GEO does, and you need to establish a national GEO in Malawi on the downstream side, and this will help you build capacity of fast track in the development. But what it assists you with is to build communities of practice. And those communities of practice are able to look at agriculture, and they come up, build a very strong case. The point that was made, what's the role of industry in all of this? It's critical that you bring in industry as well from the onset, so that, as government, as you're building some of these layers or application layers, that you're creating this opportunity, you're creating this ecosystem that allows young people to become what we call disruptive, because they will come up with new ideas as we're moving towards intelligence, as we're moving towards providing answers than just providing maps. And therefore, it's very important that you join this membership of AfriGeo and GEO. We also have a committee on Earth observation satellites. These are all space agencies coming together, and they discuss the future and the trends of where these domain is going, and that helps you again in building capacity. You need to be part of, for example, the IAF, which is an international astronautical federation, which assists because it gives you a window of seeing what globally is happening in terms of building your capacity within the country. And therefore, I just want to say to all of you, I wish you well in your endeavor. Build a space program that's going to begin to address issues of food security, issues of energy security. We're seeing the whole of Africa and South Africa as well, struggling with issues of food security as well as energy security. What's the role of your space coordination or group or the agency that needs to play? Access to education and health innovation. Someone talked about access to data, access to information. That's critical. How do you empower government to make decisions based on this information? How do you ensure that you begin to build capacity in terms of Earth observation and so on? I spoke about environmental conservation. We touched on infrastructure. It's very important for you to demonstrate that this is going to assist in the development of infrastructure, whether it's on agriculture, whether it's on energy, whether it's on urban and rural development. Those elements are very critical for you to put in your programs. As we begin to look at addressing the issue of climate change mitigation, how will this space program help you in adaptation? Remember, we talked about the world that is so ambiguous and so on. And therefore, how will the space program assist in empowering the Ministry of Environment that's charged with climate change mitigation initiatives and plans in place, in ensuring that your adaptation plan, your national adaptation plans are very robust and strong because they're based on your clear risk assessment in terms of course, looking at scenario modeling, looking at predictive modeling and all those to provide that intelligence to the decision makers as we look at the adaptation and national disaster risk reduction. Most importantly, your space program will have to say, we're going to contribute to job creation. You know, the growth of the space sector, including if you want to get into satellite manufacturing, if you want to get into launch services, but critical in the early stages, it's on the downstream segment. And therefore, we need to be looking at data analytics, you know, building young people in remote sensing and GIS, and ensure that you can demonstrate how space, because there are data available, and I'm sure in your conversation with our space agency, we would look at our coverage in terms of our ground segments and see where we have access to satellite imagery, how we can start ensuring that there's data sharing so that you can build the capacity of young GIS and remote sensing specialists that can develop these applications in data analytics, in predictive modeling, earth intelligence, and all this, including the integration of all various new technologies. And that's critical to say that you are going to build a space program that's responsive to all the challenges that we're facing in Malawi as well as in the region. I just want to wrap up by saying that what is the leadership that we need? Again, I talked about the VUCA world, and therefore, you know, as South Africa and as Malawi, as we work on this, we need leadership that is both visionary, leadership that's pragmatic, and leadership that's capable of navigating all this complexity of space endeavors in a collaborative manner. And I want to just say again, those key elements, collaborative leadership, that can drive the success of Malawian space program. It's an inclusive vision. Make sure that in your vision you include all key stakeholders. Partnership building. You need to build these strong partnerships internally first before you even go regionally, because there has to be buy-in by all the key stakeholders within the country. So engage the stakeholders, all the stakeholders. And lastly, I want to say this. South Africa is willing to work with you in this endeavor and building the capacity that you need. And therefore, a leadership that's adaptive and agile is the leadership that you require in Malawi. And we here, as you know, those who may know, Rinosuke Santoro said, individually, we are one drop. Together, we are an ocean. And therefore, I'd like to thank you, and I would like to take this opportunity to wish you well in your endeavor, and South Africa remain a partner of choice in the development of the Malawian space program. I thank you. Madam Chair, you are on mute, so I can't hear you from my side.
Good morning, sir. And thank you very much for that very comprehensive set of recommendations. We'd like to really thank you for taking your time to make this brief interaction with us. You've highlighted some very critical points, ensuring that our program is relevant, related to what is needed on the ground, and very, very importantly, strategies for financial support. And overall, between all of us, I see there's so much that you've covered that is really on point. The human capital development and opportunities for low-hanging fruit as we move forward. But over and above that, I think the collaboration, both locally and regionally, is going to be absolutely critical for all of us. And I can see as a way forward that we're definitely going to take you up on your offer to make ourselves available to strengthen the partnership and build a strong relationship with yourselves in South Africa and other partners in the region. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you very much, and all the best.
Thank you. I can see it's a complicated journey we've embarked on. But what you've put forward is very encouraging. And we will definitely incorporate it as we're setting up the agency. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, Mr. Ndau and Madam Chair. Mr. Ndau, we'll let you go now. Thank you for being with us this morning.
Bye.
All right. Let us get back into our program. We'll get right into our next presentation. And this one will be taken by Mr. Tamidayo. He is no stranger to this podium. Please let us welcome Mr. Tamidayo as he will be taking us through our next presentation. He will be presenting on Future for Space Industry in Africa.
Good morning, everyone. So briefly, I'll be talking about the future of the African space and satellite industry, but it's going to be a brief presentation. I'll talk about 10, 11 things that we're noticing as a trend in the industry and that I believe would be very instrumental in shaping the space program that we're trying to develop here in Malawi. Okay, so the first is more African countries are now developing space program. So it's not just Malawi. A lot of countries are also trying to develop space program in Africa today. Over 22 countries now, have already established or in the process of establishing a national space program. So you're not alone in this journey. A lot more countries are doing this in Africa. And they're taking different approaches to this. For example, one of the things that I noticed we're trying to do here is develop a national policy and strategy, and then move on to setting up a national agency and maybe implement specific space-related project. Other countries are taking a different approach. You've got countries like Djibouti, for example, and even Uganda, Mauritius, who are starting their national space program with some small satellite projects, and they're hoping that that would, lead to setting up a policy and strategy and to the establishment of a space agency. And this is the chart of those that have either established space program or in the process of doing one. The second point is that we're also seeing an increasing number of satellites in the region. Up to date, about 56 satellites have been launched, but between now and 2026, we expect over 100 new satellites to be launched. So we're seeing increasing adoption of satellite technology. This, for example, shows the distribution of countries in Africa that are working on satellite projects. And this shows the distribution of the stage of this project. So, Botswana, for example, they made a presentation the other day about their own satellite project also, and we're seeing this massive adoption across the continent. The third is we're also seeing a lot of shifts towards structured space application. So for countries that are even building satellite or are trying to build satellite, or that have already built satellite, they're realizing that one of the ways to increase the adoption of space technologies in the countries is by building, specific applications that, could affect different sectors in their respective countries. And this is also helping with, negotiating with the government regarding investment in national space program. So, as some countries are thinking about, putting stuff in space, a lot more are thinking about how to address their fundamental socioeconomic problems with space technology. And I love that this has been a critical part of the conversations we've been having in the last 3 days about the adoption of space technology in especially in the agricultural sector here in Malawi. The fourth is the African Space Agency is also in the, it has been established and will be, it will start operation very soon. I noticed we've not talked a lot about this. There was a question the other day about, whether African countries are working together. But we actually have an African Space Agency, which is, being implemented by the African Union Commission and bringing every African countries together to run a continent-wide space program. And this is actually very important because, as a member of African Union Commission, you are automatically a part of the African Space Agency. So it will be very good to see Malawi, become more active in the continental plan. And there's a lot of, benefits to, being active in the continental space program. This shows the timeline of operationalization of the AUC space program. They've set up a policy and strategy. We've conducted the baseline studies for the establishment and the agency. This is actually the picture of the agency in Egypt within the Egypt Space City. And while we're waiting for African Union Commission to start hiring people that will work at the agency, this is also an opportunity for some Malawians to work at the African Space Agency headquarters. But as we're waiting for this, there's already a lot of continental programs being driven by the African Union Commission, which, as a country, it would be good if we can also tap into this. One of the examples is the GMS and Africa project that I talked about 2 days ago. You can see all the countries that are actually part of the project. So we've got 45 out of the 54 African countries that are already part of this project. And the way this project is structured is because our fundamental problems in Africa are very similar. So there are consortia in like different regions of the continent. So from West Africa to East, to Central, to Southern Africa, and to Northern Africa. And what they do is they bring institutions from like the same region to tackle similar problems in this region. I don't know the specific project the South African consortia is implementing now, but we can also learn about these online. You can Google the GMS and Africa project to see the details of this. The project is in the second phase now. And they also provide a lot of funding for the local institutions that are implementing them. So we hope that if the project gets to the third phase, we will see some research institutions in Malawi that will be a part of this. The second effort is the training institute. So the African Union have these cluster of Pan-African universities that are being set up in like different part of the continent, and the last of these institutes is the Pan-African University of Space Science and Technology, which is being set up in South Africa, and I think hosted at CPUT in South Africa. So this is going to be like a training institute where people can get scholarships and funding to get higher degrees in masters and PhD, and this is supposed to be like the talent pipeline to the African Space Agency. And I think as a country, this is also, once it becomes operational, this is also one of the things that we can capitalize on to build capacity in the country. The fifth is we're also seeing a lot of shifts towards space commercialization. For a lot of countries that set up their space program 15, 20, 10 years ago, we're seeing a massive shift in public opinion towards space programs. So if the government keep investing money in a national space program and they cannot point to specific ways the investment is actually helping with socioeconomic development, it would affect the inflow of funding to this national space program, and some countries are already been affected by this. So this is pushing new entrants towards figuring out the commercialization part of the space program before even embarking on it. And this is not just an African thing. Even the US, Europe, China, everyone has moved away from government-driven space program to commercially driven space program. And of course, the government will keep investing, but the goal is to make use of the investment to build effective industries that can then take the whole space goal or space-driven effort to like another level. So commercialization efforts is now very critical, and there are also examples of a lot of countries in Africa that are already keen into this. We've got Angola, with their AngoSat-2 project. We've got South Africa with their cluster of antennas that they manage for global customers. We've got NileSat in Egypt that is effectively commercializing the national communication satellite infrastructure. So, and Rwanda, as another example, is also now setting up geospatial infrastructures to key into this, as well as a teleport in order to host ground infrastructures to provide data, especially in the Eastern African region. So there's a lot of effort towards space commercialization, and it helps a lot because if you are a space agency, for example, and you can manage to generate half of your half of your budget yourself, it helps, with negotiation with the government. And, if the government say that you also have, a lot going on, they would be, more enthused to support you. The sixth point is we're also seeing emergence of new commercial areas like Grand Station as a service, as I mentioned, where even governments that build ground station infrastructures for their national satellites are able to commercialize that and lease the use to global satellite companies that that need ground infrastructure. And this also provides some interesting revenue stream for them. There's also in-orbit manufacturing, application of 3D technology, even in space, as well as onboard data processing algorithms. Number 7 is for startups also. We're seeing there's not a lot of opportunities for startup. Before it was very difficult for space-related companies in Africa to be able to raise money. I actually tried this like 5 years ago when I started my own company. I was trying to raise money in Africa, and I couldn't do that. So I had to go to the US, got an angel investor in the US who actually provided the seed funding that we used to scale up our operation. But now we're seeing an increasing number of startups in Africa that are actually raising money both from local and international investors, from both the upstream and downstream segment. In the past, if you're building upstream, if you're building upstream startups, they usually tell you that it's not a VC backable ventures because they can't say like the way it's gonna scale to a potential exit and all of that. But things are already changing now. There's not a lot of funding opportunities for startups. There are a lot of organizations that are providing not just funding, even accelerator programs and trainings and all of that. So this is something that people that are interested in building startups can actually tap into. And then number 8, this is very important. We're seeing increasing foreign interest in the region. I've talked about how space is now a critical geopolitical tool. So, the US, Europe, China, Russia, everyone is interested in taking a slice of the African space market. And there's a lot of effort from all of these countries. And this is critical because as a country you can leverage on space in order to promote diplomacy with these countries. The US, for example, in the last 1 year they held a US Africa space stakeholder meeting in Baku, Azerbaijan earlier this year, where we've got all of the key stakeholders from NASA to US Office of Space Commerce, talking about how they can work with African countries to help with space development in Africa. And last year at the US Africa Summit in Washington, D.C., there was also another US Africa Space Forum that was held on the same subject. So, there's a lot of American interest in Africa now, and they want to see, how they can actually help, whether it's in provision of data or capacity development, whatever. And Europe, as another region, Europe has been like the biggest foreign supporter of space program in Africa. They've been investing, hundreds of millions in the last 20 years. They're the one funding the GMS and Africa program, for example, and they provide a lot of, funding and resources. even trainings and capacity development, across the entire industry value chain. And even as I'm living here next week, we have the EU Africa Space Forum in Dakar, where we're also going to be continuing this conversation about how Europe can partner with Africa in order to accelerate space development on the continent. And China, on the other hand, China is also doing so many things in the region, providing data, training, and critical space-related infrastructure. In fact, China and Russia, they are also the two countries that provide funding resources for like space-related projects. So, for a lot of countries, when they're trying to acquire satellites and they don't have money for it, China and Russia will provide loans for them to acquire this technology. So, and a lot of countries like Nigeria or Angola and all of them have even capitalized on this type of finances in order to fund some of their critical space infrastructure. China just built a massive satellite assembly, integration, and testing facility for Egypt. Even beyond building facility, they are also providing a lot of free money for like satellite projects. I know they provided Egypt with like a $72 million grant for a series of their satellite projects. They gifted an entire satellite to Ethiopia. And so these are just examples of what China is also doing in the region. And Russia, even though they're not doing as much as China, but they're also collaborating with African countries. They developed the satellite and ground station infrastructure for Angola, and they also provide the finance, to fund the project. So these are examples of what all of these regions are doing in Africa. So these are areas that we can also, tap into. So whether Malawi as a country wants to improve diplomacy with Europe or with China or with America, space is one of the critical ways to do that. Number 9, there is also increasing global competition. Space is global, so whatever we're doing, we have to think along that line. So whether you're building like a space product here in Malawi, at the end of the day, it's going to compete with like what people are building globally. So even if you're building applications here in Malawi, a company in Europe can still come in here to compete with you. So whatever you're doing, you have to do it with the mindset that it should be world class. And of course, we're seeing a lot of companies and even space agencies in Africa building world-class space products. We've got clusters of companies in South Africa, for example, building some of the best satellite components you will see across the globe. So this is not supposed to put a fear in us, but it's also just supposed to help with our perception. We gotta build for the global market. And number 10, what we're also seeing is that a lot of countries are leveraging on collaboration for space development. And space is expensive, but it doesn't have to be expensive. You can leverage on collaboration for a lot of development around your national space program. So whether it's local collaborations with other African countries or even global collaboration, you don't have to pay for everything basically. So you can leverage on collaborations for a lot of development. And in the last 22 years, we've seen over 100 collaborations in the industry with African countries. You can see 80% of those are local collaboration, with 92 being international. This is like space agreement landscape on the continent. I don't know if we can actually see the numbers, but Egypt, for example, in the last 22 years, they've signed 25 space cooperation agreements, South Africa 27, Algeria 16, Kenya 10. In fact, in a way, you can almost draw a direct correlation between how much growth countries are seeing in their space program and how much collaborations they're actually doing. So if you want to grow, you have to collaborate. Yeah, this is also, the distribution of space agreement lands. You can see that in the last, between 2020 and 2023 alone, we've got 89 space cooperation agreements. 89 is way more than what we've seen in the 20 years before that. So we can even say that much of the progress we're seeing in the industry in the last 5 years have been as a result of collaboration. So this is extremely critical. And some of the areas that we're seeing these collaborations are, in space applications projects, satellite manufacturing, ground infrastructure development, even space exploration, capacity development, and policy and regulation. And this is the distribution of countries that African countries are collaborating with. A lot has been done with Russia, much more with China, some cooperation with America, and some in Europe. And lastly, there is an increasing desire for space sovereignty. You see, events of the last couple of years, like the war with Russia and Ukraine, has shown one major thing, that countries need to build their own capability. Because if you rely on third-party capability or third-party technology, if anything happens, they can just cut you off. So, and this is also one of the reasons why a lot of countries in Africa are developing their own national space program. So, I can give you an example of the Ukraine war where, Elon Musk was, just switching off and on Starlink. And connectivity is very critical when you're at a war zone. So that's just an example of ways that, so it doesn't have to be connectivity alone, it could be even data provision. So for example, there's a lot of even commercially available data that some countries cannot access today, that for example, the US will not sell to you. So whether it's like, especially when you're looking for the best resolution images in the market, there's already 0.3 meter resolution images, but nobody's going to sell that to a country like this. So because this kind of infrastructures are critical for defense and security. So if you are 100% reliant on foreign technologies, whether it's in the area of communication or data infrastructure, if anything happens, for example, the US is the one supplying all of this for you. If your government have an issues with the US, they can just cut you off and stop providing these services for you. So it's very important now for government to start thinking of how they can build sovereignty around the national space program, where they will be less dependent on other foreign institutions and government in order to supply the critical infrastructures that they need. So I'm going to stop here. Thank you very much, and I hope we enjoy the rest of our day.
Thank you for the presentation. We'll take 3 questions from the floor. We have one. Can we get assistance with the mic?
Thank you. Once again, my name is Mercy Nagoli, a computer science student from the University of Malawi. I think my question is on, you talked of, I think, commitment. I wanted to ask, I think yesterday I also talked to most of the speakers. I was thinking, how sure are we that this thing will go on? How sure are we that the task force or the government is fully invested in the development of this agency? And my other question, I think, comes from the previous presentation. I think he talked about, what really stood out for me was that it should be simple, like it shouldn't be so complex. So my question is, what measures are we taking, or what are we putting in place to make sure that it's as simple as possible? Thank you.
Thank you. I think yesterday there was a comment on the law saying that overregulation impedes innovation. So I believe your line is in question with that. And she was assurance from the task force and any members of maybe MACRA or the government on how sure are we of the establishment of this space agency in Malawi. Before I hand over to Temidayo and members of the task force, we'll take another question, and then Chisomo will have.
Thank you very much. My name is Mag Muntali from Mapata Institute. My question goes to Temidayo. I just want to find out from him how Malawi can benefit from the GMS and Africa program that he talked about, because most of the consortia that are working with, that are working under GMS and Africa project are not from Malawi, but from other countries within the SADC region. So I just want to find out from him how Malawi can benefit from GMS and Africa program. Thank you very much.
Good morning. My name is Chisomo. Temi, thanks for the good presentation, quite insightful. I just wanted to have a little bit of your advice on how best one can approach the increasing foreign interest in the African space programs, because I understand most of the people are constantly saying that if you get money from the US, forget about China and Russia. If you get money from the Saudis, forget about Israel. So how do we make sure that as we are trying to collaborate, and especially in the space of investment, also don't limit ourselves to how we can sustain our financing in the near future? Thank you.
You can take those two, Temidayo.
Thank you very much. Let me start with the GMS project. So aside from the consortia that are actually implementing the project, there are, a lot of, like trainings and activities that, they also do that the country can directly benefit from. So, for example, they've got a GMS and Africa forum coming up next month in Egypt. So this is being organized by the African Union Commission. So, in fact, I remember in the past we've selected some startups from Malawi. I remember Drone Link, Rachel, I can't remember her name, but like she was one of those selected to be a part of like the trainings that was done on the GMS program for startup, and they were provided with scholarships and all of. There's been like a couple of other startups selected from Malawi. So, but what I think is that I think as the government needs to have like a coordinated effort, towards this. So that's why I said that you have to. It's good that there's a task force now. So I think this responsibility is probably on the task force. So I think for now the task force should act as the representative of Malawi in all of these forums. So that would involve building collaboration with the African Union Commission and the GMS and Africa, program directors, so that they can actually include the country and invite us to some of these meetings in order to benefit from it. And there might be like a third phase of the project. So this is also they just started the second phase, I think, last year. So the third phase of the project might start in like a couple of years, and this is like the perfect time to start building this relationship and engaging all of these stakeholders, so that some institutions from Malawi could be a part of the next phase of the project. I think each consortium used to get like maybe about $1.5 million to implement projects over a couple of years. The South African consortium that they have now is being led by CSIR from South Africa, and they've got Southern African Science Service Center, SASCA. I think Malawi should be a part of SASCA. Right? I don't know. SASCA is some regional institution under the SADC entity that also do a lot of work around, I think, land degradation and things like that. So SASCA is part of the consortia. I think University of Zambia, University of Western Cape, Midland State Universities, and so we've got all of that. So I think that whether going through SASCA, which is under SADC, maybe that's one of the ways to start getting involved in all of this. But even beyond the government, we need to bring the research institutions into some of this conversation, because there are funding that are available for government institutions, but a lot of funding available actually go to research institutions. So whether it's the universities or like independent research institutions, we need to bring them on board so that they can benefit from some of this program. The last question on funding access, I don't think. Well, I think it largely depends on the verticals that you're building for. I think generally in the tech industry today in Africa, it doesn't really matter where your money is coming from. In the space industry, the only time where your money is coming from matters is, is when you're selling to specific regions. So let's say you're building hardware in Malawi, like satellite company, like what they do in South Africa, and you want to export your technology to like the US or to Europe. If you're funded by a Chinese institution, that might be a problem. But that's not even just the only problem you have. There's like the governance issue where US entity, where you would need to set up like a company, another company in the US, so that some of your manufacturing is actually done in the US before US entities can buy from you. So it's a bit complicated, especially if you're building hardware technologies and you're trying to sell to like, US or Europe. But if you're working on the downstream, I don't think you have a problem, because in the downstream, you can raise money from anyone. You can build your product, you can sell your product. In fact, you can structure your product as a software as a service so that anyone globally can actually make use of it. But beyond that, from my presentation, one of the things I also mentioned is that African VCs are even now interested in funding space activities. So you don't necessarily have to go, well, maybe depending on how much you're trying to raise too. But like if you're raising a couple of hundreds of thousands of dollars or a few millions of dollars, you can even get local investors in Africa that would fund this. I think 2 days ago I gave an example of a company in Kenya that just raised $2 million, and what they're trying to build is to just analyze satellite data to provide insights on climate change for government institutions in Africa. And there is most of the money from like local investors in Africa. So, as a consulting company, we've consulted for like a lot of VC firms in Africa that are looking at investing in African startups. So as long as you've got a clear business case and you're not bidding for local markets, and what you're building actually stand out and is scalable, I think African investors will also give you money. Thank you.
Thank you. I think for the surety that you're looking for, we do have a presentation by the chairperson of the Malawi Space Task Force soon after tea break. So I believe in her presentation, she'll tackle some of your fears of being sure of establishing this space agency. I'll take one more question.
Thank you very much for the wonderful presentation. My name is Ronald Gondwe, and part of all the question I had has been tackled, but I just want you to expand and give us a key recommendation, specifically in terms of countries like Malawi. How best can space technology be leveraged to improve the coordination and collaboration among different stakeholders? And I also like to ask from the first presentation on how we can strike a balance, in as far as integration of space technology and local knowledge and practices is concerned. Thank you very much.
Can we take the question from the gentleman in the back, and then we'll give Timidayo to address them.
Okay, I'm Alan Mania from Farm Radio Trust. Thank you, Temi, for the presentation. Under leveraging on collaborations, you talked about the issue of collaborations that are happening with other countries, especially those ones that are outside. I've seen that there are more collaborations with Russia and China. So I wanted to know, are there any notable reasons why there are more collaborations with these two countries as compared to other countries? Thank you.
Okay, let me start with the last question. So, I think in the last maybe 5-7 years, there's been, I think collaboration with China is like much more than other regions. Like before then, it actually used to be Europe. There are very few collaborations with China, with Russia, but I think China is actually leading. And you're right, there are some reasons for this. So number one is in terms of finance. So again, if, let's say for example, that hypothetically Malawi today want to buy a satellite, let's say $10 million satellite, and you don't have the money. If you talk to China, China would finance the project for you. In fact, China could even find some ways to maybe, give you half of the money you need, while maybe you repay back like half. So they've got like this financing mechanism that is very, very attractive to a lot of African countries. And you guys know what China is doing across the continent. So they funded a lot of infrastructure projects. So and it's the same with space. So China is willing to fund a lot of space infrastructure projects in Africa. And this is why they're becoming like the favorite partner for African institutions. If you go to Europe and the US and you tell them you want a $10 million satellite and you don't have money, they're just gonna laugh at you, you know. Because there's no way they're giving you, for example, the technology on loan or on credit. You have to pay upfront for it. So that's one. Number two is, you see, oftentimes when there are meetings with, say, Chinese institutions, you know, you usually end the meeting with like clear goals. Like, okay, they say, oh, you know what, we're going to commit this amount of money, maybe to fund project or infrastructure or whatever. You know, they talk about numbers and they don't give you a lot of conditions. The US, for example, you can have 20 meetings with US government or US institutions and you still won't see a single dollar. So they talk a lot, they don't do so much, unlike China that, you know, they talk little and they do a lot. So these are some of the reasons why it seems like, you know, more countries are tilting towards China and Russia. In fact, it's because of this, because of the fact that more countries are tilting towards China. That's why the US is now very serious about building space relationship with African countries, because they've had the opportunities in the last maybe 60 years, but they didn't really do that. You know, when African countries were trying to develop space program that you know, 20 years ago, US government, you know, with their, you know, almighty NASA and all of that, they didn't really offer, you know, any serious support to African countries. But recently, China is coming and saying, oh, you know, we're going to help you with this, we're going to help you with that. And now that's, you know, because the US have issues with China and, you know, now they're coming up to say, oh, you know, we also want to get serious with space development in Africa. And another thing is that, you know, all of this region also, beyond, you know, whatever support they're offering African countries, we need to understand that they're also here for the money. There's money in the industry. In my chart, I showed how out of the $19.46 billion that the industry generates every year, only 4.3 billion of that stays in Africa. The rest, you know, leave the continent to like companies in like all of these regions. So everyone is still interested in, you know, the little money in Africa and the resources. So it's really, you know, a fight for this. And I think with Chinese companies' approach, they are more likely to get more contracts in Africa than the American and European approach. The first question about how best to leverage space technology, again, it's really about building applications, you know, building solutions. You know, I believe that this would be a very good way to start, and a lot of countries are already tilting towards this. So for many countries, when they want to start their space program, they think about the satellites. But, you know, whether you launch a satellite or you don't launch a satellite, it doesn't really make much difference. Although you get some prestige as a country that, oh, you also have your satellite, but it doesn't really affect the people on the streets. The way to affect the people on the streets with space technology is by building critical applications that would actually help them. So let's say, for example, we've been talking about agriculture for the past couple of days. So let's say, you know, in a way the government is able to retrieve fairly good resolution imageries of the entire country. You know, Malawi is such a small country that you would even get like commercial satellite providers that will provide you with full access to good resolution imagery of the entire country on a need to use basis. So let's say you've got access to all of that. You've got people that are analyzing these imageries and providing insights from the images. You can use that to effectively change your entire agricultural sector landscape. You can map out whole farmlands in the country. You can map out the yields of this farmland. You can even, map out critical infrastructures and figuring out people that are maybe using lands that are allocated as farmland, and they're using it for like other things. When you do all of this, you can also use it to study like the nutrients of all of these farmlands. You can use these and create some sort of database that would show the government who to provide fertilizers to, or who to provide funding to, in order to help them with their agricultural. So if you focus on that downstream application where you're just capitalizing on the technology to build actual solutions, that's much more beneficial than maybe looking at how you acquire some multi-million-dollar infrastructure. So I think, if you're looking for a way to, affect the people on the street, that is the way to go, building space applications. Thank you.
Thank you, Temidayo, and thank you for your presentation. We shall break for tea for 15 minutes. We'll be back here at 11. Just to announce, may we please form proper lines when we are grabbing tea. We have 3 serving stations, so may we have proper lines. We'll have servers that are going to assist us so that we can quickly grab a cup of tea, come back here, and then we'll get into our presentation by Madam Chair. So let us come back here at 11. Thank you.
CEIR.
Yes, the CEIR will empower mobile subscribers and strengthen their security by allowing them to block or trace stolen mobile phones, check the genuineness of a mobile device while buying, and blacklist mobile devices involved in illicit activities across all mobile network operators in Malawi.
Wow! Chingira! Put your mobile device security first.
For more information, contact Makra via email dg@makra.mw or call 261 toll-free from any Malawian telephone network. This message is brought to you by the Malawi government via the Malawi Communications Regulatory Authority, Makra.
Introducing the Central Equipment Identity Registry, CEIR.
Yes, the CEIR will empower mobile subscribers and strengthen their security by allowing them to block or trace stolen mobile phones, check the genuineness of a mobile device while buying, and blacklist mobile devices involved in illicit activities across all mobile network operators in Malawi.
Wow! Chingira! Put your mobile device security first.
For more information, contact Makra via email dg@makra.mw or call 261 toll-free from any Malawian telephone network. This message is brought to you by the Malawi government via the Malawi Communications Regulatory Authority, Makra.
Introducing the Central Equipment Identity Registry, CEIR.
Yes, the CEIR will empower mobile subscribers and strengthen their security by allowing them to block or trace stolen mobile phones, check the genuineness of a mobile device while buying, and blacklist mobile devices involved in illicit activities across all mobile network operators in Malawi.
Wow! Chingira! Put your mobile device security first.
For more information, contact Makra via email dg@makra.mw or call 261 toll-free from any Malawian telephone network. This message is brought to you by the Malawi government via the Malawi Communications Regulatory Authority, Makra.
Introducing the Central Equipment Identity Registry, CEIR.
Yes, the CEIR will empower mobile subscribers and strengthen their security by allowing them to block or trace stolen mobile phones, check the genuineness of a mobile device while buying, and blacklist mobile devices involved in illicit activities across all mobile network operators in Malawi.
Wow! Chingira! Put your mobile device security first.
For more information, contact Makra via email dg@makra.mw or call 261 toll-free from any Malawian telephone network. This message is brought to you by the Malawi government via the Malawi Communications Regulatory Authority, MACRA.
Introducing the Central Equipment Identity Registry, CEIR.
Yes, the CEIR will empower mobile subscribers and strengthen their security by allowing them to block or trace stolen mobile phones, check the genuineness of a mobile device while buying, and blacklist mobile devices involved in illicit activities across all mobile network operators in Malawi.
Wow! Chingira! Put your mobile device security first.
For more information, contact MACRA via email dg@macra.mw or call 261 toll-free from any Malawian telephone network. This message is brought to you by the Malawi government via the Malawi Communications Regulatory Authority, MACRA.
Introducing the Central Equipment Identity Registry, CEIR.
Yes, the CEIR will empower mobile subscribers and strengthen their security by allowing them to block or trace stolen mobile phones, check the genuineness of a mobile device while buying, and blacklist mobile devices involved in illicit activities across all mobile network operators in Malawi.
Wow! Chingira! Put your mobile device security first.
For more information, contact MACRA via email dg@macra.mw or call 261 toll-free from any Malawian telephone network. This message is brought to you by the Malawi government via the Malawi Communications Regulatory Authority, MACRA.
Introducing the Central Equipment Identity Registry, CEIR.
Yes, the CEIR will empower mobile subscribers and strengthen their security by allowing them to block or trace stolen mobile phones, check the genuineness of a mobile device while buying, and blacklist mobile devices involved in illicit activities across all mobile network operators in Malawi.
Wow! Chingira! Put your mobile device security first.
For more information, contact MACRA via email dg@macra.mw or call 261 toll-free from any Malawian telephone network. This message is brought to you by the Malawi government via the Malawi Communications Regulatory Authority, MACRA.
Introducing the Central Equipment Identity Registry, CEIR.
Yes, the CEIR will empower mobile subscribers and strengthen their security by allowing them to block or trace stolen mobile phones, check the genuineness of a mobile device while buying, and blacklist mobile devices involved in illicit activities across all mobile network operators in Malawi.
Wow! Chingira! Put your mobile device security first.
For more information, contact MACRA via email dg@macra.mw or call 261 toll-free from any Malawian telephone network. This message is brought to you by the Malawi government via the Malawi Communications Regulatory Authority, MACRA.
Introducing the Central Equipment Identity Registry, CEIR.
Yes, the CEIR will empower mobile subscribers and strengthen their security by allowing them to block or trace stolen mobile phones, check the genuineness of a mobile device while buying, and blacklist mobile devices involved in illicit activities across all mobile network operators in Malawi.
Wow! Chingira! Put your mobile device security first.
For more information, contact MACRA via email dg@macra.mw or call 261 toll-free from any Malawian telephone network. This message is brought to you by the Malawi government via the Malawi Communications Regulatory Authority, MACRA.
Introducing the Central Equipment Identity Registry, CEIR.
Yes, the CEIR will empower mobile subscribers and strengthen their security by allowing them to block or trace stolen mobile phones, check the genuineness of a mobile device while buying, and blacklist mobile devices involved in illicit activities across all mobile network operators in Malawi.
Wow! Chingira! Put your mobile device security first.
For more information, contact Macra via email dg@macra.mw or call 261 toll-free from any Malawian telephone network. This message is brought to you by the Malawi government via the Malawi Communications Regulatory Authority, Macra.
Introducing the Central Equipment Identity Registry, CEIR.
Yes, the CEIR will empower mobile subscribers and strengthen their security by allowing them to block or trace stolen mobile phones, check the genuineness of a mobile device while buying, and blacklist mobile devices involved in illicit activities across all mobile network operators in Malawi.
Wow! Chingira! Put your mobile device security first.
For more information, contact Macra via email dg@macra.mw or call 261 toll-free from any Malawian telephone network. This message is brought to you by the Malawi government via the Malawi Communications Regulatory Authority, Macra.
Introducing the Central Equipment Identity Registry, CEIR.
Yes, the CEIR will empower mobile subscribers and strengthen their security by allowing them to block or trace stolen mobile phones, check the genuineness of a mobile device while buying, and blacklist mobile devices involved in illicit activities across all mobile network operators in Malawi.
Wow! Chingira! Put your mobile device security first.
For more information, contact Macra via email dg@macra.mw or call 261 toll-free from any Malawian telephone network. This message is brought to you by the Malawi government via the Malawi Communications Regulatory Authority, Macra.
Introducing the Central Equipment Identity Registry, CEIR.
Yes, the CEIR will empower mobile subscribers and strengthen their security by allowing them to block or trace stolen mobile phones, check the genuineness of a mobile device while buying, and blacklist mobile devices involved in illicit activities across all mobile network operators in Malawi.
Wow! Chingira! Put your mobile device security first.
For more information, contact Macra via email dg@macra.mw or call 261 toll-free from any Malawian telephone network. This message is brought to you by the Malawi government via the Malawi Communications Regulatory Authority, Macra.
Introducing the Central Equipment Identity Registry, CEIR.
Yes, the CEIR will empower mobile subscribers and strengthen their security by allowing them to block or trace stolen mobile phones, check the genuineness of a mobile device while buying, and blacklist mobile devices involved in illicit activities across all mobile network operators in Malawi.
Wow! Chingira! Put your mobile device security first.
For more information, contact Macra via email dg@macra.mw or call 261 toll-free from any Malawian telephone network. This message is brought to you by the Malawi government via the Malawi Communications Regulatory Authority, Macra.
Introducing the Central Equipment Identity Registry, CEIR.
Yes, the CEIR will empower mobile subscribers and strengthen their security by allowing them to block or trace stolen mobile phones, check the genuineness of a mobile device while buying, and blacklist mobile devices involved in illicit activities across all mobile network operators in Malawi.
Wow! Chingira! Put your mobile device security first.
For more information, contact Macra via email dg@macra.mw or call 261 toll-free from any Malawian telephone network. This message is brought to you by the Malawi government via the Malawi Communications Regulatory Authority, Macra.
Introducing the Central Equipment Identity Registry, CEIR.
Yes, the CEIR will empower mobile subscribers and strengthen their security by allowing them to block or trace stolen mobile phones, check the genuineness of a mobile device while buying, and blacklist mobile devices involved in illicit activities across all mobile network operators in Malawi.
Wow! Chingira! Put your mobile device security first.
For more information, contact Macra via email dg@macra.mw or call 261 toll-free from any Malawian telephone network. This message is brought to you by the Malawi government via the Malawi Communications Regulatory Authority, Macra.
Introducing the Central Equipment Identity Registry, CEIR.
Yes, the CEIR will empower mobile subscribers and strengthen their security by allowing them to block or trace stolen mobile phones, check the genuineness of a mobile device while buying, and blacklist mobile devices involved in illicit activities across all mobile network operators in Malawi.
Wow! Chingira! Put your mobile device security first.
For more information, contact Macra via email dg@macra.mw or call 261 toll-free from any Malawian telephone network. This message is brought to you by the Malawi government via the Malawi Communications Regulatory Authority, Macra.
Introducing the Central Equipment Identity Registry, CEIR.
Yes, the CEIR will empower mobile subscribers and strengthen their security by allowing them to block or trace stolen mobile phones, check the genuineness of a mobile device while buying, and blacklist mobile devices involved in illicit activities across all mobile network operators in Malawi.
Wow! Chingira!
I love so many things about the city. That is where I come from. I am a citizen there. The beautiful people and dusty roads, the beauty of green in the sun. I can't wait to get there. Take a drive in the city. Oh, 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 I'm coming. Oh, I'm coming. Lilongwe, I'm a few hours away. Lilongwe, I'm coming home to stay. Lilongwe, I'm a few hours away. Lilongwe, I'm coming home to stay. After feeling as I'm living, I wanna get there on time. In the beauty of the hills and the mountains, I see the work of His Majesty. 120, I am cruising back to 80. potholes in the road. And they're playing my music on the radio. I turn it up. Dee-da-da, dee-da, da-da, dee-dee-da, dee-da-da, dee-da. There are birds in the background. Play me a little music.
We want to
Pa-pa-pa-pi-I-O. I'm a traveling man, and I'm coming to my city. Lilongwe. I'm a few hours away. Lilongwe. I'm coming home to stay. Lilongwe. I'm a few hours away. Lilongwe. I'm coming home to stay. Just give me a little time. Only a little time, and I will be there. Only the world.
Telephone network. This message is brought to you by the Malawi government via the Malawi Communications Regulatory Authority, MACRA.
Introducing the Central Equipment Identity Registry, CEIR.
Yes, the CEIR will empower mobile subscribers and strengthen their security by allowing them to block or trace stolen mobile phones, check the genuineness of a mobile device while buying, and blacklist mobile devices involved in illicit activities across all mobile network operators in Malawi.
Wow! Chingira! Put your mobile device security first.
For more information, contact MACRA via email dg@macra.mw or call 261 toll-free from any Malawian telephone network. This message is brought to you by the Malawi government via the Malawi Communications Regulatory Authority, MACRA.
Introducing the Central Equipment Identity Registry, CEIR.
Yes, the CEIR will empower mobile subscribers and strengthen their security by allowing them to block or trace stolen mobile phones, check the genuineness of a mobile device while buying, and blacklist mobile devices involved in illicit activities across all mobile network operators in Malawi.
Wow! Chingira! Put your mobile device security first.
For more information, contact MACRA via email dg@macra.mw or call 261 toll-free from any Malawian telephone network. This message is brought to you by the Malawi government via the Malawi Communications Regulatory Authority, MACRA.
Introducing the Central Equipment Identity Registry, CEIR.
Yes, the CEIR will empower mobile subscribers and strengthen their security by allowing them to block or trace stolen mobile phones, check the genuineness of a mobile device while buying, and blacklist mobile devices involved in illicit activities across all mobile network operators in Malawi.
Wow! Chingira! Put your mobile device security first.
For more information, contact MACRA via email dg@macra.mw or call 261 toll-free from any Malawian telephone network. This message is brought to you by the Malawi government via the Malawi Communications Regulatory Authority, MACRA.
Introducing the Central Equipment Identity Registry, CEIR.
Yes, the CEIR will empower mobile subscribers and strengthen their security by allowing them to block or trace stolen mobile phones, check the genuineness of a mobile device while buying, and blacklist mobile devices involved in illicit activities across all mobile network operators in Malawi.
Wow! Chingira! Put your mobile device security first.
For more information, contact MACRA via email dg@macra.mw or call 261 toll-free from any Malawian telephone network. This message is brought to you by the Malawi government via the Malawi Communications Regulatory Authority, MACRA.
Introducing the Central Equipment Identity Registry, CEIR.
Yes, the CEIR will empower mobile subscribers and strengthen their security by allowing them to block or trace stolen mobile phones, check the genuineness of a mobile device while buying, and blacklist mobile devices involved in illicit activities across all mobile network operators in Malawi.
Wow! Chingira! Put your mobile device security first.
For more information, contact MACRA via email dg@macra.mw or call 261 toll-free from any Malawian telephone network. This message is brought to you by the Malawi government via the Malawi Communications Regulatory Authority, MACRA.
Introducing the Central Equipment Identity Registry, CEIR.
Yes, the CEIR will empower mobile subscribers and strengthen their security by allowing them to block or trace stolen mobile phones, check the genuineness of a mobile device while buying, and blacklist mobile devices involved in illicit activities across all mobile network operators in.
Ladies and gentlemen, let us take our seats. We want to get into the last presentation. Let us take our seats. Those of us that are standing at the back, may we please take our seats. We have got 10 seconds. Okay. We are getting into the last presentation of our 3-day conference, and this one will be taken by the chairperson of the Malawi Space Agency Task Force, who is also not a stranger to this podium. Ladies and gentlemen, please let us welcome Ms. Tandi Gisala Mvundola. Madam Chair, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Good morning, distinguished guests, speakers, delegates, members from MACRA, and representatives, all protocols observed. This morning my job is very simple. I'm just going to tell you what we've been doing as a task force. We have been in April this year. I think maybe I should take a step back. Sorry, this is. At the first Malawi Space Conference that was held last year, one of the outcomes from that was the recommendation to actually establish Malawi Space Agency, National Space Agency. And steps were taken to do exactly that. And in April this year, 15 of us were appointed. Apologies, I just want to put it in proper presentation mode. So thank you very much, and apologies for that. As I was saying, a resolution was made at the last space conference to establish a Malawi Space Agency. In April this year, 2023, 15 of us were appointed to establish the task force for the Malawi Space Agency. So this is not the Malawi Space Agency itself, but it's the task force that is setting up and doing all the groundwork to establish the space agency. We had our first board meeting, task force meeting, in May this year. Now, the interesting thing is that the members of our task force are global. So we're truly working in space, as it were, to the extent that we all actually met for the first time. Those of us that have been here met for the first time 2 days ago, physically. But we have been working virtually since May. One of the things that I will say, and I cannot overemphasize, and commend the dedication that the task force has actually displayed. So when we look at it, we're saying we're setting up a national space agency. Why should we set up a national space agency? As you've seen, a lot of information has gone through over the last couple of days. It's been exchanged in presentations. You've gotten to see and understand that there's a lot that's going on. But for all of this to work for the country, somebody needs to coordinate it. There needs to be an agency or an entity that is going to facilitate access to this and coordination of the efforts here. So we look at a national space agency, a government organization responsible for coordination, development and utilization of space technology, human capital development and resource management for the benefit of the country. That's essentially what we're setting up. It encompasses, of course, as we've been told, the satellite development, space research, capacity building, and management of space-related initiatives. And as has been emphasized, access to databases and utilization, efficient utilization of databases available in space, some free and some at a cost. Okay. So as I said, the background is MACRA hosted this space conference. The government actually represented its commitment to harness space resources for socioeconomic development. They've drafted already, they had already drafted a national space policy, so there is a draft national space policy already in place. However, once we, the task force, were brought on board, we were given the mandate to now fine-tune a number of these elements. So the composition of the task force is various, the 15 members are from various government entities, academia, the private sector, and MACRA has been the driving force behind then the support for all of our activities. Ever since we started, as we said, we've had virtual meetings. So our first face-to-face meetings were 2 days ago. We have 4 members in the diaspora, 3 of whom were unable to make it to this meeting, but all the other members of the task force were present. In establishing this task force, MACRA has set up the secretariat and has been backstopping us all the way. Once again, immense support. We cannot, thank them enough. So I've been, I was appointed as chair, and as you see, we have as an ex-official member, the DG of MACRA, and then we have Associate Professor Shomora Mikeka, who presented yesterday, who was the coordinator yesterday, facilitator for yesterday's panel discussion. We've got Senior Counsel Rafael Mahone, who we had Elizabeth Chabuluka, Davy Hua, Dr. Stanley Mlato, Arthur Chipande, Waziri Chizuma, William Makwinja, who has also presented, Dr. Cedric Ngalande, Dr. Chatonda Mtika, Lloyd Momba, Tawanga Kananji, and Alison Mangome. And then backstopping us in the Secretariat. And while the Secretariat is a team, the key member of that team that really has backstopped us, and I had to mention his name, and we're very, very thankful, is Derek Gondwani, because he's pulled off some amazing feats, and you'll understand why in a minute, why I'm having to commend him. In brackets, you'll see that a number of people have been highlighted there. Those are the subcommittees. We set up a number of subcommittees. We realized as a task force, we need subcommittees to strengthen the work that we need to do in various sectors to really consolidate the work. And we have various subcommittees heading those subcommittees chairs. So we have the legal chair, the finance chair, partnership and collaboration chair, roadmap and focus areas chair. Dr. Chidonda Mtika and Dr. Cedric Ngalande, along with Mr. William Makwinja, work in the space industry. But the 2 of them work in the space industry in the United States. And Mr. Lloyd Momba is also in South Africa. So we have 2 members in South Africa, 2 in the States, and the rest of us are local, but some in Blantyre, some in Lilongwe. Okay. So, as I indicated, first task meeting was May. So you'd say that, okay, from first task meeting in May this year, that 6 months run you've had, how much could you get done in 6 months? Actually, with the dedication of this task team, an amazing amount, for considering we've only been on the floor for 6 months. We established working subcommittees to develop the strategic elements for the space agency. And before this conference, because the thing is, we also acknowledge that while the members represented from different sectors present kind of knew, we kind of knew what space was all about, we had to get a good grip of it ourselves and a better understanding and appreciation as a task team. So a webinar was organized. So we had an online, I think it was about 5-hour webinar, where we went through and were able to interrogate different elements of how space would impact us. And of course, some input and contributions that have been made during these last few days at the Space Conference. We had terms of reference, and a little bit lengthy, but it'll give you an appreciation of kind of the scope of work that we have to address. We have to develop a comprehensive space policy for Malawi. We've got to draft legislation for the establishment of the agency, and in drafting the legislation, we also need to establish a clear institutional structure as to where it's going to be housed. So the work we'll be doing in terms of working with partners and finding out what others have been doing will also give us some insight into that. And the legal legislation and the policies being led by Senior Counsel Rafael Mahoney. We need to develop a roadmap and related activities for the establishment of the Malawi Space Agency, and we have a task team focused on developing the roadmap. It's coming to a close because we've developed the initial framework, but we're now getting collaboration between the different sectors, different subcommittees to input that and make that more robust. So we will be finalizing that. Developing capacity building strategies for space science and technologies in Malawi. As part of the work that we're doing, we're also planning a number of countrywide stakeholder consultations, particularly with universities and academic institutions, to enable them to, A, to sensitize them, and B, to ensure that the academic institutions are taking this seriously and developing curricula that is applicable and will be relevant for space agencies, and to build up the space agency, because the space agency on its own doesn't function without the human capital that's needed to run it. Okay. Promote and facilitate strategic partnerships for advancement of space science and technology in Malawi. And Dr. Makwinja is doing an excellent job in terms of building collaborations and partnerships, and we're very thankful that he's been able to link up with a number of you from SANSA and from the region who he's familiar with, and we really appreciate the input that you've given to us. It's been very enlightening. Thank you. Develop the strategies for the implementation of the space programs, lead any space-related projects initiated by Malawi before the establishment of the space agency. So while we're working, because setting up an agency is not exciting work, okay? It's administration, it's like a slog. But we don't believe that now that the momentum has started already, in getting people interested in space and excited about space, we believe it's important that we continue to build on that momentum. So we will be working towards identifying what everybody calls, low-hanging fruit, and the use of free data is one of those, and we'll see how we can strategize to get that to implement and to be utilized while we're in the process of actually establishing all the mechanisms for the space agencies. So we look at working in parallel rather than saying we will only do this without that. We need to do this, but at the same time, we're building up the other elements. Mr. Hambulani was the CEO of SANSA. The points that he made in terms of building communities of practice, I think, is really important. So I see, this has been a beautiful experience for me as well, because there's a lot I've already learned who's doing what advice we can get from one side and the other. Building communities of practice, I know that Mr. Charles Govert has continued to say, the farmers, the farmers, the farmers, the farmers, the farmers, the farmers, Ministry of Agriculture and so on, think about the farmers. Yes, it's important for us to start building those communities of practice, the farmers, from the university students. A number of young professionals have approached me and told me a bit about what they do, and they're in silos. They're there, but they're in silos. So we have GIS experts, but they're in silos. We have remote sensing experts, they're in silos. Building those communities together enables us to access opportunities for them to get greater exposure, both in the regional and the board. And I saw that there's a key player here Temidayo, who we'll be latching onto to try and help us finance that or find ways of sponsorship or opportunities, because he's well versed in who's doing what where in this space globally, not just in Africa, but globally. But identifying, building our communities of practice and linking them up with opportunities to engage with what's happening around the world will be very important. Okay. Facilitate research and development, R&D, again, through the universities and research institutions. Develop a framework for monitoring and evaluation of the impact of space programs and projects implemented by the Malawi Space Agency. That's critical. Another point that's come through very clearly is that if your space program does not talk to the development needs of your country, it becomes redundant. So as we build that, we've heeded that warning, we're taking that into consideration, we're going to factor it in and ensure that as we go forward, we're ensuring that we're relating it and contextualizing what we need to do to make sure that it's relevant for the country and speaks to that, because when it speaks to the needs, the real needs on the ground, it's not as difficult to get funding for it or to build up the necessary collaboration. I believe that to be the case. So I may be going on a wing and a prayer and a little bit of belief, but I'm hoping that that will get us where we need to go in that space. Okay. Collaborate with key stakeholders to promote awareness and understanding of space science and technology among organizations and the general public. Our stakeholder consultations are going to be absolutely critical, and our partnership and collaboration chair, Dr. Makwinja, is going to be leading that. We've already set up a program, and we'll be finalizing that and taking the engagement. Now, one of the things that I've always said in this kind of space, when we're talking about awareness and sensitization and building up collaboration and meetings with stakeholders, particularly in what I call a virgin space. You know, this is virgin space that we're talking about, that people are not really quite clear and haven't got a good grip and understanding of exactly what this intangible is. And I understand this from previous experience with IT, when I was implementing computerized systems in financial institutions, and you had the old accounting machines, which most of you will never have heard of, is these big accounting machines with cards where they printed the accounts, and this card went into the machine and printed whatever transaction line by line by line. And then when I installed this system with a computer, the accountant was like, no, this thing is not working. Where are my accounts? I said, but it's in there. He says, no, I need the card. He still wanted to go back to the old technology, so he could not even visualize where his transactions had gone and what had happened to them and whether he's going to be able to retrieve them. So virgin space, this is where we're at. And it's going to be important that as we hold our stakeholder consultations, they're not just consultations, because the consultations is when you assume that people know what you're talking about, okay? And you assume that people know how they're going to use it. We as the technology specialists have to be the ones to bridge and understand their needs, and then understand how the space technology is going to talk to their needs and address their requirements. That's what we need to do. So we need to be that bridge, and only then will we be able to be successful. So our stakeholder consultations will not just be consulting, but it will also be awareness raising and capacity building. Facilitating knowledge sharing and information exchange with international space agencies and organizations to leverage best practices, learn from others' failures, foster cooperation in space agency. So learning from others to see what they did wrong and what they did right is always important. When people have always, and as I said, I'm still amazed that the term leapfrog technology is still being used today. I shouldn't even say it, but it's been used for nearly 40 years, okay, that term. So I think they should have retired it and used something different. But nevertheless, when we're looking at building those collaborations with international organizations and leveraging best practices. A classic example was, when we met with our counterparts from Angola, I had an opportunity to meet the Angola Space Agency experts, and they were able to tell us very clearly that, guys, the first thing you need to do, whatever else you're doing, build the human capacity development. You've got to start training people now, not yesterday, now. So whatever you want to be able to do, you will not be able to achieve it if you haven't got the human beings to actually implement it. So for us, that is why we're taking that particularly seriously. Study financing, business models, and business, and identify funding opportunities to develop strategies for securing financial resources. Temidaya once again raised issues of funding, and as did the CEO of SANSA, that funding, it's nice when you have a bottomless pit, but not many people have a bottomless pit, and governments are becoming more discerning about how far they finance this. So I believe we as a space agency have got a responsibility to identify means of funding. We're going to have to get grant funding in some areas. We're going to have to get input from the government in some areas. But if they don't see the results, they get tired and they're like, you know what, I'm not so sure about you guys, So we need to find a way that we create a business model that is sustainable. It can get seed funding, but the core must be sustainable in its own right. And at the moment, our institutional structure is such that we report to MACRA, so we have a responsibility to do that. And those are the 13 terms of reference that we have to work with. Okay, it's a long list. It's a long shopping list, and we're trying our best. Okay. So the space agency, as I indicated, we set up a number of task forces, subcommittees. The roadmap subcommittee is the one that's setting the overall roadmap for the agency. Now the thing is, there's this roadmap for the agency and the roadmap for the task force. So we have to sort of integrate those and say, where does the task force work end and the roadmap continue? But we are looking long term, and we'll be taking that perspective. Partnership and collaboration. So the roadmap subcommittee is chaired by Dr. Cedric Ngalande. The partnership and collaboration subcommittee by Dr. William Makwinja. Focus areas is chaired by Dr. Chatonda Mtika. The finance subcommittee is chaired by Elizabeth. Legal and policy subcommittee is chaired by senior counsel Raphael Mohone. And the technical subcommittee doesn't exist yet. Okay. It will be set up, but as I said, we're literally 6 months in, so we're very new to this space. But the other reason why I'm saying that Derek Gondwani from MACRA has done an amazing job is he sits in all of these subcommittees. Okay, I sit in 4 of them. I think it's 4 of them, but he sits in all of them. So he's the one that has acted as our secretariat and has backstopped us in each and every one of those. And the reason why it's particularly challenging is that the task force has met once a month, every month since we were appointed. But the subcommittees have been meeting every week. That's why the Herculean job that Derek has been doing is so amazing. Within the subcommittees, each of the subcommittees developed their terms of reference, and they've held either weekly or bi-weekly subcommittee meetings since their establishment. We've had good results from that. We've pushed ourselves hard, and now we're like quite exhausted, but I think the progress that's been made has been amazing. At each month, the subcommittees report to the main task force. So I also sit as an ex officio in most of the subcommittees, but then the main task force to just help things along to make sure that we're going in the right direction. So we've established strong coordination and collaboration between the task force committees and the chairs, I'm pleased to inform you, have really taken their task seriously and run with it and done, again, an amazing job. So they've been developing the key strategic documents for the establishment of this task. So what have we achieved to date? Okay, we have the monthly task force meeting, we have the weekly subcommittee meetings. We've developed the roadmap and some of the related activities. We haven't finalized that because we're working now to strengthen amongst now it's a cross collaboration between the different subcommittees. We've compiled a comprehensive schedule of all events, preceding the establishment of the Malawi Space Agency. So this is not the Malawi Space Agency activities, but all of the ones prior to that we need to do in the interim as we're setting it up. We're finalizing the budget for the task force operations. We've identified key stakeholders for national consultation, and as I said, those schedules will be shared with the various institutions. And the senior counsel from the legal subcommittee, they've immediately started their job by looking at, because as countries, you tend to go to these international fora, to the UN and things, and you accede to treaties and you say yes, and you're like yes. And you're not really sure of the implications and they're not really sure about what they're about. So we're going to review all the treaties that have been signed and agreed to already as a country and where they stand, that we have acceded to that have got an impact on space. So the Senior Counsel will be leading that process. He's already identified some of the treaties that we need to look at. We've been reviewing and we're identifying international and national strategic partners. It's been exciting to see that we have Malawian entrepreneurs in the space sector. Congratulations, that is really encouraging. The problem is we'll be knocking on your door and saying, come this way and tell people that it's possible. So you'll expect us to be at your doors to work with you, but we're happy to collaborate with you. Okay. We've advocated for and are currently facilitating the setting up of the Malawi Space Agency desk office at MACRA. That's critical. As I said, our desk office has been Derek. Derek, can you raise your hand so people know who Derek is? I keep on mentioning Derek. Thank you. Thank you. So he has been our desk office and our secretariat, and he's coordinated everything for every single one of the subcommittees and the main task force. And so you can see that the volume of work has already become phenomenal. So we're working to set up a desk office and at least a secretariat to enable us to proceed. I've already mentioned we had a space orientation webinar for the task force, and we've in working in this space policy, and we need to make sure that our space policy and what we're doing in space speaks to that and gives solutions for that. So it's not just a policy in a vacuum. Inevitably, there are going to be components that are not in the vision that go over and beyond, because as happens with technology, you will start and think that you've covered everything. And when people are doing their policy, they're like, yeah, this is it. But you don't know the scope. You cannot even imagine the magnitude of the scope that technology can bring to the table. So there'll be areas that go over and beyond, but initially we're starting off by making sure that we've got issues aligned with the vision. But that's going to be a lot of work going on. It's ongoing work. And of course, the participation in this conference these last 3 days. So on that note, I really would like to thank you and express my sincere gratitude on behalf of the task force to the government, specifically MACRA as well, for their unwavering support for innovative development, exemplified by the creation of the Space Agency Task Force. I had retired. I mean, as I said, I've been in IT for over 40 years. But I had retired and I was now cooking. So when they said, they dragged me out of the woodwork and said, come and see whether some parts of your brain are still functional. So I was humbled to be part of this task force and to take this forward. I'd also like to extend a special thanks to the dedicated members of the Space Agency task team. When I say we meet every week, the meetings are not 5-minute meetings. None of them are. And everybody takes time out of their busy schedules and makes themselves available. For those that are in the States, we have one young man that's waking up at 6 o'clock in the morning to attend our meetings, or staying up till 11 o'clock at night to attend our meetings, and they're dedicated enough to be there when we need them. And we really have to extend a special thanks to all of them. And the Macro Secretariat, Derek and all the team that work with him to support the work that we've done. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you so much, Madam Chair, for the update. May we also have another round of applause. I think they're doing a good job. Meeting every week is not a small task. We have a meeting one day, and we are complaining half of the week that the meeting was too long. And